I have a little more audio on my headset.
Oh, the mic's still on.
Perfect.
And good morning. You're listening to AVNewsCast.com on News Talk 1380.
Morning.
Good morning, the number one news talk radio program in the Antelope Valley.
Yes, sir.
In a minute, we are going to go live with the LA County DCFS Director, Philip Browning.
Is he calling
show.
or we're calling him?
He actually is calling into us, and we'll get him live. Before we do that, though.
Do you have the butterflies that I do?
No, not at all. I'm good.
I've
I've had dialogue with him, and I'm really looking forward to this.
You're Iron
I
Man.
think, because I think you got like a preview. I do have a little butterfly because I want him to really reassure me, and I want to feel like I've got some reassurance for the rest of the children out here.
Yeah, well, that's going to be good. Before we do that, though, you know that Bradley Manning this morning
Yes.
got 35 years. 35 years in prison for just supplying some inside information that wasn't the end of the world, but it was okay to WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. I mean, you can't do that.
That's 35 years.
Which is
No,
say
what
he'll
is
end up
not
doing
coming
28
Okay.
with good time.
So what do you think is going to happen to Snowden?
He's not coming home.
You know what? His bones are going to be shackled to the walls for thousands of years.
Yeah, he's not coming back. Come on.
Yeah.
No, that's...
Yeah, his skeleton will be in the Smithsonian.
Yeah.
So what do you think if they ever prosecute, what's his name from WikiLeaks?
It'd be nice to get a hold of him.
Yeah, what do you think?
And
would happen to him?
He's not He's not idiot. Like,
Oh, yeah, he'll never come anywhere near close.
No, he's not. That's done.
He's going to end up in Argentina before it's all done.
Costa Rica.
You think so?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or
Yeah.
Venezuela. Venezuela is the only people that hate us enough to want to.
Well, Costa
Take
Rica has
somebody
no
like him.
extradition.
Well, his father's going to visit him in Russia.
Yeah.
Snowden's dad, yeah.
He's
gonna make
probably
a
not
trip.
coming back either.
My kid did that. I'd write him off. That's it.
You'd write him off?
I'd write him off.
Really?
You don't betray your country.
What if he killed somebody?
I'd write him off.
Oh, okay. So you're equal opportunity.
Oh,
right
yeah,
now.
yeah.
Okay.
I raised you right.
All right. I don't know if I'd write my kid off if he did that.
You know, I don't either.
Yeah, I think
I-
that
I'm not
if he killed
sure.
a person, child abuse, those kind of things, yeah, I can write you off. But that, you're just an idiot young kid. What were you thinking?
I was treated poorly and had plenty of opportunities, and I didn't do anything because of my patriotism. So
Yeah, I got that.
I had a card that said nobody could. Oh, this is a whole other thing.
I'm afraid because
It's a whole other thing. I had a card that said nobody could check my backpack, and I was locked in a room that nobody could get into with the most sensitive data possible and a photocopier.
Yeah. Well, you're
And
a
I
man
didn't
of
do
trust.
anything.
Yeah.
you know I will tell you something though, Angelina, in case you didn't know. He actually, where Jeff was in an area that even the president couldn't go.
Yeah. Obama wouldn't be able to go in my office.
Now, what do you think about that?
That's
okay? You've
backwards.
got these guys. You've got these just individuals. Okay, just people in the government, in the military, that are in offices doing stuff that is so top level that even the president can't go there to know what they're doing.
But the flip side
So he's
is,
really not running the planet.
But check this out. The flip side is, you guys expect him to know everything, because when Petraeus and that whole thing was going on and Benghazi, you guys were flipping out. How come he didn't know? Of course he knew. He's the president. He's supposed to know. Well, clearly there's things that they do not keep him in the loop on.
Okay, just hold on.
No. Active combat he's in the loop on.
Whatever.
Whether, who different sources are in the
I think we
intelligence
have a
community is
caller
the other
now.
thing.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll
God
pick
forbid we
that
say
up.
anything bad about
No,
Obama.
we'll get that after the 8:30 break, and we're going to skip the 8:15 break.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we've got Director Browning on the show, so let's talk to Director Browning. Director, are you with us? Wonderful. I can barely hear him on my headset. Sean, are you good? Thank you, Director. I want to thank you, right off the bat, for taking the time to come on the show.
Okay, my pleasure.
Good morning,
I
sir.
appreciate it. On May 24th, 8-year-old Gabriel Fernandez died as a result of having been beaten and tortured at the hands of his mother, Pearl Fernandez, and her boyfriend. Pearl Fernandez and her boyfriend are right now being prosecuted on capital murder charges with special circumstances of torture. We've all read the reports that DCFS had that indicated that social workers had been to this child's residence at least 6 times to investigate allegations of child abuse. We know it takes a village to raise a child. Where did we go wrong?
Well, I think there were a number of places where the entire community could have done a much better job and hopefully have prevented this situation. There were a number of opportunities for DCFS, for law enforcement, for a whole host of individuals to have really done a better job. I'm really so saddened by this tragic set of circumstances. DCFS was investigating on a number of different situations where a worker would go out to the home, talk with other individuals, and we just did not perform at the level we should have performed. And that is so sad. I think we are making some changes based on this investigation and some other investigations, but it is such a tragic event.
You know, I've spoken to people, and you and I have spoken on the phone, and the one thing that I got from you when we spoke on the phone was that what happened to this child deeply troubled you. And I picked that up on the phone with you when we spoke.
This is a troubling situation for any parent or grandparent, and I'm both. It is so sad to know that something might have been prevented, and I do think we have to look ahead, and we certainly are trying to take advantage of what we've learned and try to make some adjustments in the way we do business. The department has, for a number of months, been working on a new training plan so that our workers get better training. That's one of the most important things, I think, is to have staff who, when they talk with individuals, whether it's a mother, a father, or a child, to listen to that individual and to take action. And so we have an entirely new training program, which just kicked off this week. So we have, instead of an 8-week sit-down classroom training for our new staff, we have a 52-week program where they'll get mentoring and leadership techniques, and they'll get more investigative training than they've had in the past. We have some law enforcement staff who've been hired as consultants that we hope will beef up the investigative techniques and skills of our staff.
How are you going to combat the caseload in and of itself? It seems that there's just so many children that need to have an eye on them. And although I did hear that you hired, I think, 250 more social workers, is that enough?
Well, that's probably not enough, and we actually haven't hired all those 250. We hired the first 100, and they're in the training program right now. The Board of Supervisors and the CEO gave us authority about a week ago to hire an additional 150 staff. So we've identified a couple hundred staff who are going through the evaluation process. It's a fairly rigorous process where they have to go through a medical, a psychological, a drug screen. And we do have a number of individuals who don't pass, but what we want are the best and the brightest to put in the field. One of the things that we're looking at is trying to move as many staff from the headquarters office back to the field, back to the line is what we call it. And so we made some progress in that regard. I think for many of our offices, what we're trying to do is to identify a better way of doing business. And part of that involves having more technology, such as up-to-date copiers, which we've just rolled out 1,000 new copiers to all of our offices so people don't have to stand for 15 minutes waiting on a copy to come through. We've provided about 1,000 iPhones to our emergency response workers so that they can communicate back with their supervisor by an email and a text. You'd be surprised that before I came here, all they had was a cell phone about the size of a brick that didn't have any email or texting capability. Now they have a better way to communicate. That iPhone also has a talk-to-text feature so that a worker can actually talk into their telephone and have that printed out on a screen and uploaded into their computer system so they can save time in getting their notes recorded. So technology is where we need to go, and we're hoping that will assist workers in the field.
I have a question regarding the actual visual eye-to-eye with these children. Have you guys revamped the way you interview them to cover looking at every child's body and to make sure that those things are maintained on a regular basis?
Well, the current policy and the current expected practice is for a worker, when they see something that looks unusual, when they see a bruise or a cut or something, their policy requires them to take that child, for the most part we're talking about children, to a medical doctor or to a medical hub and get someone to assess that. You know, we have nurses in our offices, in all of our offices, who are available to actually come out to the home or to have the child looked at by a nurse. But the common practice and the expected practice is for a worker, if they see something that they can't identify what's going on, to take that child to a medical hub and have a doctor actually, or a nurse, make a determination of what's going on. That's a policy and a practice that's been in force for a number of years, and we're trying to reinforce that to make sure every staff member knows how critical that is so that there are no mistakes.
But here's the thing. How do you make sure that that staff member is doing that?
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why we're having more training and a different kind of training so that we can reinforce that. But also, we've reinforced that expectation from our supervisors. So workers have supervisors that they're expected to talk with and discuss a case with. I met with a group of new workers yesterday and told them, if you have a question that you don't know the answer to, you have a supervisor. Go to that supervisor and get assistance. Many of the workers in the field have been there for 2 to 4 years, but their supervisors have normally been around for 5 to 15 years. So the supervisors are the key link in this process.
So there's going to be more checks and balances.
Well, there's going to be an upgrading of the checks and balances to make sure that staff are complying with what the expectations are.
Yeah, because weren't there checks and balances before? I'm not at all trying to throw this into a bash, but there were checks and balances before, weren't there?
Well, there were checks and balances, and I think there are always going to be situations where something is overlooked or something isn't done at the level that we expect, and that was the situation with this case that we're talking about. There were things that were not done and things that should have been done, I think, and that's very obvious, and we're taking steps to remedy that. We don't want a repeat of that at all, so we've reinforced the staff, we've reinforced the supervisors, how critical it is to just use common sense, critical thinking, and accountability, but to also ensure that the policies are followed and the practices, the good social work practices, are followed also.
One of the things that I've become aware of since Gabriel's case that's just absolutely driven me crazy is the fact that when a child abuse report is made, it's tied to a location and not to an individual. So if there's 5 different cases and 5 different reports in 5 different places, a sheriff rolls up, he sees what's happened at that one location. He doesn't see that there's a systematic...
There's not a child a link to it. Yeah.
There's not a systematic abuse going around that's been reported in a lot of different places. Is there anything we can do to get that tied? I know it's
I think
the sheriffs as well that we're dealing with.
You've identified a very good issue about communication. I think communication is the biggest challenge we have in Los Angeles County today. And the sheriff and I spoke specifically on this issue about how we as 2 departments can communicate better. He had some good ideas, and we're talking about how we can share more information. Automation is the key. We get about 160,000 phone calls a year. We're talking 15,000 or more a month that come into our hotline to say there's a potential neglect or potential sexual or physical abuse. So we have that reviewed at the hotline level, and then that's transmitted out to our staff who actually make an investigation. The sheriff by the same token, they have calls that come into their offices, and they have to go out and investigate. And we do need to do a better job in communication, and that's something we're certainly working on.
Right. I had the opportunity to meet Sheriff Liebacher last week, and we discussed it, and we've had the Palmdale Sheriff's Captain, Don Ford, on the show, and that was one thing that he indicated as well. Director, let me ask you a question. I know that your agency has moved to terminate 2 social workers and 2 supervisors. What's the status of that? Can you comment on that?
Well, that's a personnel matter, so I can't really get in detail, but the process is that once an employee gets a notice, which is an intent to terminate, then they have a certain period of time, usually 2 weeks, that they can, quote-unquote, appeal that to an individual within the department. And I think that there have been 2 appeals at this point in time, and normally after that appeal occurs at the administrative level, then the employee has an opportunity to take that to the Civil Service Commission, which is a part of the county government, and have an appeal to a higher level. So all of that is in the process now. The employees, I think, are exercising their options, and we don't have any resolution at this point. I think the appeal process is still ongoing.
Are they paid or unpaid throughout that process?
Well, I had agreed to pay them up until the first appeal process, which I think was about 2 weeks. And so they were on paid leave, and once they hit that appeal deadline, which is normally 2 weeks, then they would be on an unpaid status.
I see.
Well, I think accountability is key, so I definitely applaud the department for getting rid of both the supervisors and the caseworkers that was involved.
Well, and I do think this is a very tough job. There's no doubt, just like Lee Baca would say, that his staff are put into very difficult situations and dangerous situations, and our workers are too. Mm-hmm. And so it's not simple, it's not easy, but I do think that accountability is critical, and I think we've moved forward in that regard to make the best decisions we could for the children of the county.
Well, absolutely. If you've got somebody that has no qualms with hurting their own child, somebody who they feel is invading their home, they're certainly not going to have any problems with hurting. So, it's a scary situation.
And it's about the choice. I mean, Steve, Jeff and I, before we came on the show, we were saying to ourselves, we don't know what possessed you to take this position.
Yeah.
Because it's such a massive responsibility. But it's all about the choice, and it's about whatever motivates you.
Well, and I'll just be honest, during my 40 years of public, private, and military service, this is the most challenging job I've had.
I would imagine.
We have 35,000 children today for whom we have responsibility. We have about 7,500 staff. This is a huge department. It's one of the largest in the United States. And this is a tough job. I will assure you that this is no simple task. We have thousands of workers who are committed, and I don't want to let one incident overplay the great work that's done. There are thousands and thousands of situations every day where children are reunited with their family, or they're put into a safe and loving home, or we take them out of a dangerous situation. So this is one situation, but we can't let it override the great work that's done by almost all of the workers in DCFS.
I adopted 8-year-old twins through DCFS.
Wow.
It was the greatest, toughest thing I ever did in my entire life. And I just want to really quickly throw a shout-out to Cassandra McKinley. She's out of the Pomona office. She is the most fantastic social worker I ever dealt with, cared more than anybody else that I ever met in that department. And she's just wonderful. If you need somebody to teach somebody how to be a good social worker, she's the person.
There you go. A plug for social worker to the boss.
She's the best.
Well, I appreciate that. We don't often get those kind of thank yous, and I certainly appreciate, and I'll follow up with Cassandra McKinley just to make sure
incredible.
she knows it.
Director, I know you have to go, but I want to ask you a question. What is the process and timeline if someone picks up the phone and calls your agency and says that there, I suspect, sexual abuse, physical abuse, neglect going on? What is the process and timeline of a follow-up on that?
Well, we have a 1-800 number, which is 1-800-540-4630, 540-4000. We have about 200 staff whose full-time job is to answer the phone and take information from a neighbor or a mandated reporter, which might be a school teacher or it might be a law enforcement individual, and to assess the risk to see if there's a real need. If in our estimation there's a real need, then a worker can go out that day or within 5 days if it's presumed not to be a real emergency. But we try to get out that day or the next day. So we'll have a staff person knock on a door, not knowing often who's on the other side of that door, and assess that situation to determine if the children are at risk, and if so, we might have to get a court warrant to remove those children, or it could be a simple misunderstanding, which does occur from time to time. So the vast majority of those 160,000 calls or so are situations where we determine that the child is not at risk, but about 7% of the time we actually take a child from the parents or relatives and put them into an alternate situation because that's the best care for those particular children. So we take that seriously. We have timelines that we have to comply with, and that's one of our most critical tasks. It's called emergency response. And we have staff throughout the county whose full-time job is to go knock on those doors and make sure those children are saved.
You know, you brought up a great point because I know that there's a percentage of people that are going through bitter divorces and they're upset with their spouses on both ends, and they make these false allegations and they clog up your phone lines with all this junk.
Well, they do, and it's difficult to decide and determine what is critical and what's not, and often we err on the side of caution. So we'll send a worker out when maybe we wouldn't have to, but I think we're so sensitive to the situation where if we don't go out, something bad might happen. So
well, you can't take chances.
That's right.
But Director, how does a parent or a spouse stop those repeated harassing phone calls when really they're just done for harassment?
Well, I think over time, we have an automated system so that we'll know that these things are occurring, and so some of the times if we get 10 calls from one spouse, the hotline worker knows that this is probably not an emergency. Frankly, unless the person gets a restraining order from the court to prevent that, we can't not take the call. I mean, we can't just dismiss it, but we certainly, if we saw that this was number 10 in a line of calls that was from the same person and nothing had happened on the others, then we probably wouldn't give it the importance that we would otherwise.
As the agency continues to overhaul itself and put new policies in place, can we reach out to you and bring you back on the show?
Certainly. I'll be glad anytime you need to have me here.
All right. I appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. I know I have to let you go at 8:30, so I'm going to let you go. But I greatly appreciate you coming on. I know our listeners wanted to hear what you had to say.
Thank you so much, sir.
Well, thank you, and you both have a good day. Take care now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Let's go ahead and take a break, Shauna. And then we'll come back, and if we want to, we'll take some calls. Yeah. You're listening to AV Newscast on News Talk Radio 1380, and we'll be right back.
My name is Doris, and I'm an 82-year-old patient of Dr. Brewster's. I disliked the way my smile looked. My teeth were chipped and discolored. A friend finally asked me why I didn't smile anymore. When she found out, she recommended I see Dr. Brewster at Boulevard Dental. And now I have a beautiful smile that I am very proud of. My friends and family tell me I look happy, and I am. You are never too old to have a beautiful smile. Call Dr. Brewster at Boulevard Dental.
This is Dr. Reed Brewster from Boulevard Dental Group. Don't let fear stop you from obtaining regular dental care. Please give us a call at Boulevard Dental Group, 947-7737.
It's almost time for the Rally Kia Arena events, the Figure 8 and Trailer Race sponsored by Allstate Cullen Insurance and the Rural Olympics Fireworks Show sponsored by Calandri Sunrise Farms. Both events are free with paid fair admission. The Figure 8 and Trailer Race on Thursday, August 22nd at 7:30 p.m. is Military Appreciation Day. The fair honors all active and retired military and their families with IDs and DD-214s with free admission to the fair and a tribute to the military celebration during the Figure 8 Trailer Race. The Rural Olympics competitions are on Saturday, August 24th and include contests like hay stealing and the antique car potato race, followed by fireworks. The Figure 8 Trailer Race and Rural Olympics are free events with paid fair admission, and the Figure 8 race is on Military Appreciation Day, August 22nd, where admission is free for all active and retired military and their families with IDs. For all fair information, go to avfair.com.
If you're thinking about getting your backyard in shape for entertaining, there's only one place to shop, and that's Abadak Outdoors in Palmdale. At Abadak Outdoors in Palmdale, you'll save up to 70% off retail every day at our factory warehouse showroom. Abadak has everything you need to get your backyard in shape, like 7.5-foot tall, 41,000 BTU, freestanding LPG patio heaters for just $159.99. How about a fully enclosed backyard gazebo? Fire up that barbecue and enjoy a nice meal inside one of our Mandalay, Trinidad, or Mykonos freestanding gazebos. Just $219.97 every day. If you want wholesale prices, come to Abadak Outdoors in Palmdale. How about backyard shade or car canopies? You can pick a variety of color choices starting at just $129.97. Stop by Abadak Outdoors in Palmdale. We're located at 38940 Trade Center Drive, 1 block east of 10th Street West. The Abadak Factory Showroom is open from 8 to 4 every day. That's Abadak Outdoors at 38940 Trade Center Drive in Palmdale, where you'll save up to 70% off retail every day. Check us out on the web at abadak.com or give us a call at 661-480-1562.
From the concert hall, now into the song and dance.
Welcome back to AVNewsCast.com on News Talk 1380.
Yeah, I know people wanted to call in and get on while Director Browning was on, and we didn't do
Just
it.
had such a limited amount of time.
I know, but let's go ahead and take a call.
Yeah, we're fighting against
hi, you're on live on News Talk Radio.
Hi, good morning. This is Emily.
Oh, hi, Emily.
Good morning.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How are you all doing?
Very good.
Did you catch that?
I'm sorry?
Did you catch the interview?
I didn't. I'm at work, so, I thought I'd just call in.
Oh.
Okay. Well, basically what Director Browning said was that, and Emily, I've spoken to him, not just today on the show, but we've spoken before, and about what happened with Gabriel. And the one thing that I got from him was that there was no question, I could hear it in his voice, that what happened to Gabriel is something that deeply bothered him.
Right, which is understandable. I've seen his press conferences on the news, and I don't hold him responsible because he has to overlook a whole department of more than 1,000 workers. I understand that. I've never said I held him responsible. What I wanted to know was what's going to be the outcome of the 4 social workers?
Well, he said that, he said something that was kind of interesting, okay? And it showed a little bit of, I'm going to say a little bit of anger, because what he said was, he said, Jeff asked him a question, what is the situation? And he said, well, they did move to fire, 2 supervisors and 2 social workers. And he also said that he was only going to pay them for 2 weeks. And right now, they're not getting paid, okay? And they are going through the appeal process. But
Which sounds like a stretch for years.
Right. Now, one thing that he did say, he talked about accountability.
Right.
And, when you take his statement of accountability,
yes,
coupled with the fact that, they very quickly moved to fire 2 social workers and 2 supervisors, I think that kind of tells you, what's going on.
Yep.
So their appeal, when they appeal it to their union, to the board, or wherever they have to appeal it to.
It sounded like there was 5 different levels of appellate process.
They have to go through levels because it's a union, and the union is very, very strict rules and letting people go. But with this type, it should be an immediate termination.
It should be clear.
Well,
it should, because they showed negligence. Did they follow up with Gabriel at any time that Pearl said, he's not here, he's with the grandparents? Did they follow through with it? Did they look into it?
Yeah.
Those are my questions. Yeah. Those are my questions. Did they do their job properly? Apparently not, because Gabriel's life was lost.
And apparently not because they were fired.
Yeah. And they were fired.
Yeah. All right.
But because they're appealing it, is there a good chance of them keeping their positions?
You know what? I'm just going to make a guess, okay? I would not want to be one of those 4 social workers.
No.
Coming back, yeah.
Right. And you know what? I think that if it is shown, Emily, that they were negligent, grossly negligent, lazy, didn't do their job, didn't care. I don't think the union's going to really back them either. This is really blown up, and we've even had, elected officials from Sacramento on the show talking about this, and Assemblyman Steve Fox was all in favor of, let's just go with a criminal action.
Well, this isn't just a black eye. They
beginning.
lost an eye on this.
But
issue.
you know what? But here's the thing.
DCFS.
Here's the thing, guys. They're appealing it. We have no idea what they're appealing it based on. Although the manual may say that you need to do whatever it is, it might be customary to do what they did do. Within the department. So we don't know what they're claiming their position of not being responsible is based on. It might be that, we stopped checking kids' clothing or the body of a person, based on whatever. We don't know what they're saying. So it would be very interesting to hear what they're basing their appeal on.
Right. That's what I want to know. What are they appealing? I mean, just take it, swallow it, a bitter pill. You caused this negligence. You caused the life of Gabriel, an 8-year-old boy, to remain in that living condition with that abuse, with reports over and over and over again. And I think they should be grown-ups. They didn't take their job seriously, and they didn't take that life of a child that serious.
Well, Emily, 2 of them are, because he said there's only 2 that are right now going through the appeal process, and you had 2 weeks to start the process. So it seems that 2 of them are swallowing that bitter pill. And regardless to whether or not it was customary or regardless to whether or not there was a check and balance in the book, I don't know why you wouldn't just say, you know what, the end result is that I did have a line of communication that could have saved this boy's life. Let me just take this loss. Because I don't know what you're fighting for.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what they're fighting
for
either.
a cushy job.
Well, I wouldn't want to appeal something if a child's life was lost under my watch.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to appeal it. I would, if anything, want to reach out to the family and apologize to them. Have they made that effort? No. Can they look at somebody in the face and face the family? I can understand they probably can't. But, I mean, the 2 that are not appealing, good for them.
Yeah.
They're taking that pill. Good for them. But the 2 that are appealing it, I swear, if they appeal this and they get their jobs back, I will seek legal counsel, not to sue them, but to sue the union to fire them. No money involved, just to get them out of there. They don't deserve their jobs.
Well, I understand that, but you know what? People appeal things lots of times, Emily, and you watch what happens when Pearl has to enter a plea. Now,
right.
We all know what happened, and you know what? She's going to enter a plea of not guilty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there's your unfounded appeal.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, and it happens all the time.
I mean, we all know they are both guilty. One watched, one abused, vice versa. We all know they're both going to come back and say insanity, or they're going to come back with that not guilty plea. But the rest of the world knows that they are guilty.
Absolutely.
There is a child's life that was lost due to this.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the 4 social workers, but everybody in the family that did see this, and they knew about it, just like when the grandfather said, I seen her get in his face, I seen her hit him, I've seen her slap
Burns on the
Virginia.
feet. Yeah.
He just contradicted himself. He's seen it, he witnessed it, he did nothing about it but get in her face. You know what? No. You don't get in your kid's face. You pull her out and you throw her butt out on the street. And you keep those grandchildren safe.
You know what, Emily? And you might not even know this, but DCFS actually gave Pearl, served her with a document, and wanted to interview her in the office. The date of that document and the date of that interview, on that very day, Robert was down in San Fernando Valley filing to get custody of Gabriel on that very day. I've seen the documents.
Nice.
Okay?
Right.
He was doing what he could do. He was trying to do what he could do.
The legal way. I understand he wanted to do everything legally.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. And he didn't want himself, to get into trouble. And, part of the problem, Emily, and Jeff brought it up to Director Browning, is that, in an age of technology, we've got 2 agencies, the Sheriff's Department and DCFS, that didn't share technology. And
Right.
that's between that and then the school and his teacher, you've got all these reports out there, but nothing goes to a central file.
Yeah.
So nobody
And
knew
there
what
has
was
to
going
be-
on.
There has to be a line of communication between law enforcement and the DCFS.
And that was one of the
There
things
has
that
to be
Director
some type-
Browning said. He's been meeting with Sheriff Baca in order to make that happen.
Yeah, but you know what? I gotta say, because it would be not me if I didn't say. Are you kidding? They were walking around with cell phones the size of bricks?
I've seen
It took
those.
this to get to a better
But
cell phone?
It did, and you laugh about it.
I know,
but
I'm not laughing.
I don't
I'm
mean
saying
in
to
that way.
myself, I'm saying there had to have been Gabriel's before Gabriel. You know, it's just, my mouth dropped.
There
Yeah.
has been other children before Gabriel. Only thing is, it hasn't been blown out the way Gabriel's story has.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and they think by trying to make changes in the DCFS, and just trying to keep Gabriel's story is not going to go away. I'm going to keep that page of Gabriel's Justice running years on end, and I'm going to keep reposting that story, and I'm going to make sure that that story never dies, as well as all those other children that have lost their lives. Baby Brianna, there was a story a few years ago where the parents and two other people abused her, raped her, beat her, killed her. I mean, so many people have come to Gabriel's Justice with their stories, asking us to share it on Gabriel's Justice site, so that the DCFS, CPS, all of those held responsible are held responsible.
Well,
that were negligent to all of these cases.
Well, they're working on that. And, back in 2008, I think it was, they had some blue ribbon panel back there, and that didn't work out. But I will tell you that, Director Browning has told me, and we've spoken on the phone, that, Gabriel, at the end of the day, Emily, Gabriel's life has tremendous meaning. And Gabriel is going to be responsible for saving thousands and hundreds of other kids' lives because of the changes that are going to take place. Because this is something, as you said, he's got a very difficult job, and it wasn't Director Browning himself. But part of his job is to make certain that this doesn't ever happen again.
Yeah.
Right. And like I said, I personally never held him accountable because, he does have to overlook a lot of these social workers. He has an enormous job to do. I understand that. I can understand the pressures and everything. And I have personally been working with somebody that just graduated and is on her way in becoming a social worker. And with her input, I'm able to work on something that I can present to the board and hope that these changes can be added in with their Blue Ribbon Commission, because they need to listen to us as a community and not within their own facility, not within themselves, because changes don't come within the facility of them. The changes come from citizens such as ourselves and Gabriel's grandparents and the rest of the families that are out there suffering. They need to listen to our feedback and take our comments into great consideration.
Well, ultimately, they're responsible to us.
Right. Emily, I do want to mention one other thing, though. You know that Robert was told by LASD, by the Sheriff's Department, that if he tried to remove Gabriel without legal cause, he would be arrested.
Oh, absolutely.
And they were wrong. They were wrong to say that, because they should have taken into consideration that child's safety came first.
But legally, they're right.
It's
Legally, you can't just go into someone's house based on whatever you believe is the truth and remove a child.
Right.
Legally, you can't.
How
Morally, how many lines would we line up to go get that done? A lot.
But on the other
Right.
hand,
But
you're a
when
legal
she took
expert.
him- when she took Gabriel to her father's house and he's seen those visible marks, why didn't he reprimand him there in his own home and kick her out? Let her bring the cops over to his house, and then he could have presented Gabriel and said, look,
hindsight
this
is always
is what
20/20.
she's doing. This is what's going on, and this is why he's with me, and tomorrow morning I'm going to the courthouse, and I'm going to get temporary custody as an emergency hearing. That could have been done.
Okay,
But
well,
he let him go back home with her.
You're a legal expert, Steve. Instead of taking Gabriel, what how are you able to do a citizen's arrest kind of thing? Could he have
what she
taken
said.
her and dragged her down to the sheriff's
No, you call
department?
the police and you say, these are the marks on my child, my grandchild, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
You prove that there's an issue. You let the police talk to the child. They'll call the Department of Social Services. A lot of times they'll take that child out of everybody's hands. That would have been one of the issues. But absolutely, he could have done that. But
go the other direction, not take Gabriel.
He could have.
Well, yeah, but actually,
he could have taken Gabriel at the time of seeing those visible marks. He could have taken Gabriel to the emergency room to be evaluated, and they themselves would have called the social workers, and those social workers would have removed him right on the spot and questioned the mother, and probably giving Robert temporary custody until a court hearing and an full investigation would have been fulfilled.
You know what, Emily? You can't really say that, though, that social workers would have done that, because the social workers went to this. They went to Gabriel's residence at least a half a dozen times, okay? At least a half a dozen times, even as recent as back in February, just a couple of months before Gabriel died. They didn't do anything. They didn't act.
Yeah, but they didn't see any bruises. They didn't look at him.
They didn't look at him. But this is coming, if he was taken to the emergency room, this is coming from doctors saying that this child has been abused, and then those social workers would have looked into it further versus going to his home, seeing him, not seeing him. Emergency room, bruises, doctors, social workers come in, cops come in, the child is taken away and put into a safe place where he could be safe. Being at a home where she refuses to let them in, it's completely different. It is completely different.
And that, you know what, that was something I wanted to ask Director Browning, but I know we didn't have enough time. If a social worker goes to a home and the parent answers the door and they're there to look for child abuse or sexual abuse allegations or inspect the child, and the parent says he's not home, when he's really in the bedroom scared to death and told not to open his mouth, something's got to be done.
Well, you would think that they'd be able to go out to their car with their brick of a cell phone and get a warrant within 2 minutes.
That's one of the things that I'm working on, that if the mother says the child is not present at the time of their visit, then it is up to them to find where that child is, and they need to question that parent. Where are the whereabouts? Give me the address and the person that he's with so that we can go there and conduct our investigation. They need to follow up with that, not just turn away and say, we'll be back.
But again, it really just depended on the social worker, because I've heard of cases that they've said, okay, we'll call him because we're here to see him. And I've heard of people having to call their child and have their child come from wherever they were because the social worker wanted to investigate. And that's what it is. If a social worker comes to your house and says, I want to check out your kid, let them check out your kid. If you don't have anything to hide, then get this done.
Exactly. But when you don't present your child, then that should be a red flag.
Yeah.
What is she hiding from us? If that child is not in school, but yet that child is the school is reporting, the teacher is reporting, then where is the child at?
Yeah, totally.
See, all it comes back down to, again, is common sense.
Yeah, it always comes back to the common sense.
And I'm just angry now. The hurt, it's still there, but now I'm just getting angry because this is just going around in circles and in circles. And I want to see something done. I don't want to see those social workers keeping their jobs. Not one dime should be paid for them.
No.
I understand. And at the same time, Emily, we have yet to hear or see a lawsuit filed on behalf of Robert. I know when that lawsuit does hit and the agency is served, there'll be more transparency and there'll be more changes.
Yeah, Emily. Honestly, it hasn't even gone around one lap yet. I mean, this is gonna take a while. And good things, when you want good things to change, it takes a long time because every nook and cranny needs to be examined. A flashlight needs to be held on every single aspect of how they operate.
There's other things, Emily. I mean, and we've talked on the show that in the last year or the last 18 months, there were 120 kids that were put into foster care, into homes, where within that home there was a registered sex offender that resided within that home. Now that's the craziest thing I've ever heard of.
That ain't crazy.
And that's another one of the things that I have down on the petition as a list, that each foster parent has to be fully investigated, a background check, fingerprints. If it's not already being done, if it is, they have to check every individual that's in that home residing. It's not a paycheck for the foster parents just to live off a child that's been abused and then re-abuse that child. Those charges have to be looked at, and they have to be denied as foster parents.
Right, I
They
understand.
should not be near a child, especially if they are a sex offender. And no way, and I don't know what the county thinks, by putting a child that's been abused into a sex offender's home. That's just a disaster.
That comes to checks and balances and a lot of things, and they're not there yet. And, in Director Browning's own defense, this agency has had more turnover, okay, in that position of being the director. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, but I have heard, and I've heard from people on the county level that they like and respect Director Browning, and they really think that he is doing a good job. He's got a very tough job to do, and it's not easy.
I agree. Nothing's easy, and people are going to talk, and people are going to want to remove him, and people are going to fire at him, and because he didn't want the job in the first place. They're going to aim their anger at anybody they can aim it at, because I felt it firsthand. Right. And I didn't, and they say, well, you didn't do anything. But they don't know my story, and I don't care to tell my story, because it's not about me. It's about Gabriel. It's about his justice.
Right.
And it's about getting justice on those 4 social workers who did nothing.
Absolutely.
Right.
And like I said, I've met a couple of social workers. I'm working with these social workers. I would rather work with them to get their input to make these changes happen, because their opinion is more value than anybody else's, because they know firsthand what is going on, what they got to take on, what they have to go through every day. They have 34 cases, 50 to 60 children a day, and I've read it, I've seen it, and like I said, working with them is giving me a better opening of an eye of what they really have to endure, and I don't hold all of them accountable, just those 4.
Just the bad ones.
Right. Now, and they are, which we started to talk on, they are overworked. We know that. The social workers are. If you file a false police report, there are consequences, okay?
Well, they need to
there needs to be consequences. They're so busy chasing a chicken with its head cut off for no reason at all.
Yeah.
Okay? Because spouses are going through divorce and one wants to get the other one in trouble. They're so busy with that it makes doing the job very difficult.
Yeah. Right, and then the real issues are being ignored because they're trying to focus on this case when there's a real case of abuse happening. Mm-hmm. But they got this job that they got to finish first before they can move on to the next one. So this one has to be put onto the shelf.
Right, but imagine how busy the Antelope Valley social workers were. Both Lancaster and Palmdale must have been out of control busy if they needed to bring on another 250 people. Okay?
Right.
Just to maybe get to ground zero.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, you're talking a huge staff.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay?
And they're still swamped because 100 of them are still in training.
Right.
So nothing's really changed by means of personnel as of yet. But I think that the other great point to take away from this is that it's a choice. I take my hat off to them because it's a great job, it's a great service that they're doing, but it is a choice. And you need to really think about that when you decide to take a job. If you really say that you want to put your life on the line for a child or for the general public, you need to know that there's consequences.
Right.
And you might lose a part of your life behind this choice. It's a great thing, but if you make the choice, I'm holding you accountable for it. I'm sorry, I can't give you an out because you got 250 kids. You chose the job.
You chose that job, and you took an oath to save a child, to protect a child, as if that child was your own biological child.
Right.
Absolutely.
And what they should have done with Gabriel and all the other children who lost their lives because they didn't take that oath seriously.
Right. One thing, and we've talked about this before, if I was a school teacher, if I was someone at school and a child came to my classroom and you could physically see the bruises. And we've seen the pictures of Gabriel from school.
Right.
I could tell you right now, makes no difference at all, that child's not going home.
Nope. No.
It's not going to happen.
There was a time where my oldest daughter was in elementary, and, I used to stand with her until she made it safely into that gate, and that she was safe. At one time, I seen a parent walk up to another child, get in this second grader's face, and yell at her and scream at her because she was fighting with the mother's son. But this little girl did not have her parents on premises at that school. But the little girl's crying, so I took it upon myself, and I reported it to school officials. That mother walked in to defend herself, but how do you defend yourself when you're degrading yourself and screaming at a second grader that is not even your child? Kids will be kids. They're going to fight. So I got into that mother's face, and I gave her the same treatment she gave that second grader. How dare she do that?
Good luck with any kid that messes with one of my kids. They're going to hear about it from me.
Yeah,
I
hear you.
And I'm the same way. I'm very protective of my kids. I'm very protective of my friends' children and any other child that comes across my path because they're helpless and they're defenseless.
I hear you.
And that's what Gabriel was. He was helpless. He was defenseless. He cried for help over and over, and he was ignored. And I never wish bad on anybody. I don't wish bad on the 4 social workers. I want them to realize their negligence, and maybe 2 of them have. But ask themselves, how do they sleep at night?
Oh, I don't think they do.
No, I understand. Emily, I want to thank you for calling in. We're just about out of time.
Thanks, Emily.
Yep. Thank you for having me again.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye. It's a tough one. There's no question about it because at the end of the day, and we've talked about this on the show before, I really, if I was at the school, this child wouldn't have gone home.
Well, no.
I've seen the pictures of him holding, from school, and really.
I saw that picture too with the big M.
We posted that. We posted some of those pictures.
Right.
On our site along with the story of the shows that we've done.
Right.
And you could clearly see the abuse on him.
I know. There's no question about it.
I chose those pictures just because of that.
We'll reach out to him. I know that the agency DCFS is going to report back to the city of Palmdale in the next couple of months. We'll follow that up, and we'll get Director Browning back on the show and see what happens. And I'm sure there's going to be much more coming out when Robert Fernandez files his action against them, too. So, it's going to be something. But it was great having him on. I'm glad he decided to come on and rather than Brandon Nichols coming on the show.
Yes.
Who has appeared, both at Lancaster and Palmdale. Getting to the top guy and getting him on the show was good. And we'll get him back on.
That's where the buck stops. You don't want a middleman. You want answers from the person at the top.
Yeah, which is really great. I know a lot of listeners sent emails, dozens and dozens of them, and it's really hard to get to all the questions.
Right.
It's
especially
really
when you have a
difficult.
limited amount of time.
It is, because we could have done
and we're
hours.
fighting each other to talk.
Yeah, that's for sure. For sure.
Jeff is like, you're talking too much.
Yeah.
I'm not. It's just I want to say something. I want to say something.
But thanks for listening. Thanks for making us the #1 news talk radio program in the Antelope Valley. Have a great day, and we'll be back tomorrow.
The following was a sponsored program. High Desert Broadcasting is not responsible for the views or claims expressed in the previous program.
This is the home of Hannity, Bortz, CNN News, and me, Dennis Miller. News Talk 1380, KOSS, Lancaster.